Police officers arrest a black CIA agent. What happened next was unbelievable. It was a crisp, clear morning in Willow Creek, a quiet town nestled in the rolling hills of upstate New York. The streets were still, with only a few early risers beginning their daily routines. People went about their business, unaware that something extraordinary was about to take place right in their small community. Among them was Officer Mike Larson, a veteran of the town's police force. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and had the confidence that came with years of patrolling these familiar streets. Larson took pride in knowing his town inside and out. To him, nothing happened in Willow Creek that he didn't know about. As Larson cruised through the quiet streets that morning, his eyes scanned the usual landmarks: the local diner, the hardware store, the rows of small, modest homes. Everything appeared to be perfectly normal. But then, something caught his attention. Parked outside a small convenience store was a sleek black sedan. There was nothing particularly suspicious about the car itself, but something didn't sit right with Larson. In a town like Willow Creek, most people drove older, practical cars, not something this polished and expensive. Larson slowed down as he passed by, his eyes trying to peer through the sedan's tinted windows. Inside, he barely made out the silhouette of a woman sitting in the driver's seat, a black woman sitting alone. His instincts immediately kicked in. To him, no one just sat in their car without a reason. She had to be up to something, Larson thought. He pulled his patrol car over just a few hundred yards down the road, already planning his next move. What happened next would shake Willow Creek and challenge everything Larson thought he knew about his town. Keeping a close watch on the sedan in his rearview mirror, Larson noticed something off. No license plate on the front, and from his angle, he couldn't spot one on the back either. This made his instincts buzz. He radioed dispatch, keeping his tone casual. Unit 12, this is Larson. I'm checking out a suspicious vehicle outside Jim's Grocery on Maple Street. No plates visible. I'll investigate further. Over. The dispatcher responded with a quick confirmation, and Larson stepped out of his cruiser. He adjusted his belt, ensuring his badge was clearly visible and that his holster was easily accessible as he walked toward the car. A sense of anticipation built up in his chest. Something felt off. Why was she just sitting there? Larson knocked on the window, the sound sharp and authoritative. Inside, the woman slowly lowered the window, meeting his gaze with calm, steady eyes. She appeared to be in her late 30s or early 40s, dressed in a professional black suit. Her dark skin was complemented by her neatly pulled-back hair, and her expression was cool, almost unreadable. "Good morning, ma'am." Larson greeted her, his tone firm but polite. "Mind telling me what you're doing here?" Without flinching, she glanced at him briefly before replying, her voice calm and measured. "Good morning, officer. I'm just waiting here, doing some work." Larson frowned. "Work?" he questioned, his skepticism evident. "What kind of work?" "I'm with the government," she said plainly. "I'm on duty." Her response was so matter-of-fact that it caught Larson off guard. "The government? Which department?" he asked, his tone sharp with suspicion. "CIA," she responded without hesitation. For a moment, Larson stood there, uncertain how to react. Of all the things he had expected, this wasn't one of them. His eyes scanned her face for any signs of deception, but she remained composed, unbothered by his scrutiny. "CIA, huh?" Larson echoed, his voice laced with skepticism. "Mind if I see some ID to back that up?" The woman nodded, her face still unreadable. "It's in my bag. May I reach for it?" she asked. Larson hesitated, having been in situations where people claimed anything to avoid trouble. He wasn't about to be fooled by a story, no matter how confident she seemed. He narrowed his eyes, his guard up, unsure of what would happen next. Larson's eyes narrowed, his hand resting near his holster, ready for anything. "Go ahead," he said, watching the woman's every move. Slowly, she reached into the passenger seat where a sleek black leather bag sat. She unzipped it carefully, pulling out a slim black wallet. Handing it over to Larson, he opened it to find a CIA badge and identification card, complete with her name, rank, and photograph. Her name was Rachel Carter. Still, Larson wasn't convinced. He'd seen fake IDs before, and something about this entire situation felt off to him. A black woman in an unmarked sedan claiming to be a CIA agent in Willow Creek? It didn't make sense. Not here, not in his town. "Ms. Carter, I'm going to need you to step out of the vehicle," Larson said, his voice hardening with authority. Rachel raised an eyebrow, her composure unshaken. "I've shown you my ID, officer. Is there a problem?" she asked, her voice calm. Larson stiffened. "I'm just doing my job, ma'am. Step out of the car and we'll sort this out." Without further argument, Rachel complied. She opened the door and stepped out, standing tall, her hands visible at her sides. Larson eyed her, still not convinced. She didn't look nervous or guilty. In fact, she was unnervingly calm. Most people showed some anxiety when confronted by law enforcement, but not her, and that bothered him. "I'm going to need to search the vehicle," he said, already moving toward the driver's side door. Rachel didn't move. "You have no probable cause for a search, officer. I've complied with everything you've asked, and I'm on official government duty," she said firmly. Larson ignored her, his hand already on the door handle. "Step aside, ma'am," he ordered as he opened the door and began searching the car. Rachel stood still, her eyes following his every movement. She knew exactly where this was heading. She'd seen it too many times before. This wasn't about her credentials or her cooperation. It was about something else, something deeper. She had hoped that by following every rule she could avoid this outcome, but deep down, she knew better. After a few minutes, Larson emerged from the car, his face flushed with frustration. He hadn't found anything. There was nothing suspicious, nothing illegal in the car, but Larson still wasn't satisfied. He turned back to Rachel, who stood with her arms crossed, her expression unchanged. "I'm going to need you to come with me to the station," he said sharply. Rachel's calm demeanor didn't waver. "On what grounds, officer?" she asked, her tone steady. Larson hesitated for a split second before responding. "You're acting suspiciously, and I need to verify your story." Rachel's eyes narrowed slightly, but she didn't protest. She knew exactly what this was about. "Fine," she said coolly, "but you're making a mistake." Larson escorted her to his patrol car, cuffing her hands behind her back. The tension in the air was thick, but in his mind, he was certain he was doing the right thing. There was no way, he thought, that a black woman like her was really part of the CIA, especially not in a place like Willow Creek. As they drove to the station, Rachel remained silent. She didn't try to defend herself or argue with Larson. She'd been through this before, and she knew that nothing she said would change his mind. He had already decided who she was the moment he laid eyes on her. When they arrived at the station, Larson marched her inside, handing her over to one of his colleagues as he began processing the paperwork for her detainment. As he was filling out the report, a phone call came through to the station. The voice on the other end was from a high-ranking official in Washington, D.C. Larson listened as the voice confirmed Rachel's identity. She was an active CIA agent, currently on a highly sensitive mission. The color drained from his face as the reality of what he had done hit him. Larson had just arrested a federal agent on duty without cause, driven solely by his own suspicions and biases. The weight of his mistake hit him like a ton of bricks. He had humiliated a woman who was not only innocent, but had also dedicated herself to serving her country in ways he couldn't even begin to comprehend. Rachel was released immediately, her composure still intact as she walked out of the holding area. She glanced at Larson as she left, her eyes cold and unflinching. She didn't utter a single word, but her expression conveyed everything. She didn't need to tell him how wrong he was. He already knew. Larson stood there, watching her walk away, the weight of his actions pressing down on him. He had made a mistake, one that would haunt him for the rest of his career. As Rachel stepped outside, she took a deep breath of the cool air filling her lungs. She had done nothing wrong, yet she had been treated like a criminal. But she wasn't surprised. It was just another day in America. It served as a stark reminder that no matter how far she had come, some people would always view her as less. What would you have done if you were in Rachel's shoes? Share your thoughts below.